Thank you very much for joining me today, Sam. I really, really appreciate that. Now, we're here today to talk about werewolves.
Yes.
Not the mythological creatures, but the absolutely kick-ass band that you've been a part of for a number of years now. Now, as I understand it, you started the project in 2019. The goal was to release 10 albums in 10 years. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Album band was started by Matt and Dave. I think it was one time it was after an Abramelin rehearsal, they were just hanging out, and I think they've both got major love for Marduk's Panzer Division Marduk album,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they were having a coffee somewhere and just listening to it, talking about it, and going, "How good would it be just to do a band like this obnoxious?" Without all like the intricate bits and technical parts and solos and stuff. And yeah, so that's where the idea of doing Werewolves was born. And I got a call from him after the fact, like going, "We need a bass player, a vocalist who works as fast as us. We don't want to get like two separate members for that, so we don't have to like share the split like four ways, just three. You in?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, of course I am." And I thought the whole "we'll do 10 albums in 10 years" thing was a little bit of a joke at first, but only days after that, like "Are You In?" call, Matt had written an album. He recorded the guitars a couple of days later, and then a week or two later, Dave had done all the drums. About the time it took me to tell other people, like, "Hey, I'm in another band," they'd already written the first album. So I got into the spirit of it, did my stuff, all lyrics, bass, and vocals within a month. And then in the next month, we got signed and had to come up with a band name. So, yeah, from early days, it was pretty obvious that we were going to, give this 10 albums in 10 years thing a serious crack. And, right now, with the release that we've got coming up next month, Die For Us, we're halfway there, living on a prayer.
5 for 5.
Yeah.
So, look, I mean, that's impressive by any metric, right? I'm a muso myself. I've done musical projects in the past, and I had at one point band I was in. We'd spent a couple of years writing a first album, and then we came to the second album, and it was like, all right, cool, we want to pump this out, see if we can get 2 albums out, released, one in November 2021, see if we can get the second one in November 2022. Very quickly realized it wasn't going to happen. So I have immense respect for the task and the ability for you guys to write that prolifically for such an extended period of time, right? Like it's an incredible task. And I guess that leads me to the next question is a lot of people might worry that releasing that much in that time is going to carry with it the concern of, well, is some of this just filler for the sake of getting the release out, right? Like, I mean, looking back over obviously coming up to the 5th album, Die For Us, which is coming out in July, looking back, is that a concern that you think is something you guys have had, and has it been borne out, or are you just guys looking back on it going, look, this is all killer, we're all like no filler, all killer, we're extremely happy with everything that we've released?
Well, concern would happen if we actually thought about it, and we don't think about it. We don't think really at all, ever. So we haven't been that worried. On a real serious note, we kind of make sure in a few ways that there is a little bit of a change between each album, which offsets any, if everything was exactly the same, then that'd be more of a problem. There's little sort of like things we do in the background just to make sure things are like shifted slightly, and so that each album brings kind of something new. With Die For Us, it'd probably be a bit more anthems, a bit more sing-along, a bit more big sort of like big choruses sort of stuff. With it, I'm not talking hair metal stuff. It's still blistering and blasting.
Yes, it is. I've had to listen to some of the stuff that was sent through, and by God, it is like, yeah, blistering is right. Like, it is some heavy shit, and the fact that it's only a 3-piece is very impressive too. Like, that's, I have a lot of respect for what you guys are able to bring out.
Cheers, man.
With just as a 3-piece there.
We're still waiting for that wake up call where like someone does like listen to one of the albums and goes, nah, it was good until now. Now they've lost it, and Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen some point between, before album 10. It hasn't happened yet, though.
Well, I mean, like there's if there's one thing I know about death metal fans, it's that they tend to fall into two camps. They're either fan for life, like once they like you, and they're going to be with you until the end, or they're like either fan for life or they're extremely fickle. There's not many that fall into the middle, right? Like I find a lot of them are, if they're with you, they're with you. They're ride or die. They will just follow you to the end. They'll love everything you release, or they'll like one album, say that that's your best album, and then everything else is trash. And and that's not a dig on death metal fans themselves. Like they're allowed to enjoy what they like and have their opinions. And it's just something an observation on my part, right? Like
I'm like that Obi-Wan Kenobi meme. I'm like, of course I know a death metal fan. It's me. Like, I'm the same. There's like bands I like where there's only a couple of albums I'll listen to, and the rest I'm like, throw that in the trash. I hate it. So I totally get what you're saying there. We kind of jump up and down, I admit it, on the same sort of like pleasure button. If there's something about the first album that you enjoyed, then you can guarantee it's going to be there in some form, sort of like on albums 2, 3, 4, and 5. Probably it's going to be there all the way through to albums 10 as well. Kind of what we found is like because we've all got these other bands like where we really put in the time and effort and the years and painstakingly craft things and have blood feuds over which riff goes where and all that sort of stuff. And for however much that brings, like really scrutinizing the process and shit. Hey, I can swear, right?
yes.
Thank fuck. Okay, so yeah, for however much that brings, just like scrutinizing the process, really like getting down on it. There's also something that really is brought to a recording when you guys go how to try and do it a bit more spontaneously, or even rush it. And when you do that, you tend to fall back on, I guess, this is a weird word to use with death metal, craftsmanship or workmanship. And you're right. There are moments where kind of like you do have a song where there's like a section where you're kind of like going, inspiration isn't striking like here. What do we do? And at that point, that's where workmanship jumps in, and you sort of like, between all of us, we've got about 25 years experience in death metal each, roughly, and that's where 25 years of listening and playing sort of like jumps in. And it's kind of like, oh, obviously, we stick in something mysterious and arpeggiated here, come up with 101 there. And with that level of experience between us all, like we seem to be nailing it so far.
Well, I mean, look, as you say, like if you're averaging 25 years experience each, that's 3/4 of a century of experience between the lot of you, which is it's nothing to sneeze at. And as you mentioned, you got plenty of experience with other bands to bring to the table there as well, which it always helps. Like I feel like for most people, each successive band, the process is more nailed down. For most people anyway, like unless you're one of these people that wants to go off and
Chuck Schuldner, who wants to just like throw away everything they've done and all the band members and start again, like with each album. Berserker used to be kind of the same as well, and like, it's so painful. It's
So I mean, you mentioned a little earlier on, this album's got a little bit more sort of, I guess, anthemic elements to it. What else do you think helps this new album stand out compared to, the previous 4 that people may have heard from you guys?
Well, with each of the last few albums, like we go through the same thing every time we put it out. We're kind of like, fuck, this is so brutal. And then we'll have that worried bit where we all go, can we actually get like heavier and more horrible than this? I don't know if we can outdo this album. And the previous album that we put out, My Enemies Look and Sound Like Me, was fucking nuts. And we really like that one. Like, but again, the problem that you got when you're like doing an album a year is like with that freshly in the background, there's no illusions that you're going to like improve greatly or vastly as musicians like in 12 months time. And I think we all kind of went, if we're looking to get more crazed and savage than that, it's not going to be that huge jump. So what can we do that's different? And I guess like last year was probably the big touring year for us. Like we had 2 national tours and played a bunch of shows. I mean, here, there, and everywhere. So we went through that thing every band goes through, where like you play stuff live and you kind of see what really works, what people what they respond to, what they cave each other's heads into, and and so for me at least, not speaking for the other guys, but with this album, there was more of a kind of like, I want to see a bit of bloodletting in the pit. Like, what can I be screaming at them that's going to inspire that? And kind of the result of that is, as I say, sort of like big anthemic choruses, like, you know, like the song Fuck You, Got Mine. Stuff where people can sort of like, you know, wave smaller members,
pump their fist and do all of that.
Wave the smaller members of the crowd above their head, like while shouting it. You know, that sort of stuff. And the same thing for the title track "Die for Us," which is, I think that was the first lyrics I did for the album, and that kind of set the tone a bit. You got to set the tone.
Yeah, and so I mean, I'm very curious. Like, as the vocalist and the lyricist here, it's a lot to write about every year. You know, and obviously, like a lot of vocalists, they'll reference a lot of what's going on in the world or in their personal lives. How do you find, like, how do you deal with that challenge of just having to output so much? And you're like, okay, cool. Like, I've got, I'm not saying you've only got a year to draw on, like, but obviously if issues are weighing on your mind, like a year is really not that long of a time for you know, global issues to change, and life can, sometimes things can change quickly, or other times problems can hang around, right? Like, how do you find the continued motivation to write and just continue to have that output just so prolifically for something like that?
Yeah, it's pretty fucking hard. Like, if you're writing the music, then, you know, riffs and sections can just repeat. In fact, they're expected to repeat, like, unless you're being Nile or someone like that. So, yeah, it's kind of hard, because chorus is the only place where you can just, like, recycle. And even then, you have to show a little bit of inventiveness, or people get bored. When writing about the world, I'm in a lucky space at the moment, because like every year is just another like tsunami of holy fuck at the moment, and has been like since we started. You know, the first few albums we were kidding with everyone, you know, sorry guys, we release another album, so here's another world war or like financial crisis or a pandemic to like go with it. And we've stopped saying that because it's almost not funny anymore. But yeah, when writing about stuff going on outside, and we do a bit of that, like there's just plenty to select from. As for the process itself, like you know, I've always written a fair bit, so I've always got material around. You know, if you go back 10 years where I wasn't doing that much music, I was writing a blog basically about like all my music industry experience, times touring, things with Berserker. So I was always like getting the fingers onto the keyboard and giving it a little bit of a tickle. So it's not hugely different. I have a couple of like lyric word documents where anytime I hear something like interesting or noteworthy or stupendous, or usually when Matt or Dave say something hilariously metal, it goes down in that. You know, and it's definitely the same with song titles, and the guys have tweaked onto it now that I'm like quoting them, and so I think they're trying extra hard to be funny,
trying to get their shit in.
Yeah, and Matt especially, like two of the song titles on this album, probably more if I like caffeinated it a bit more and really thought about it, but two of the song titles like came from Matt. The puns, beaten back to life and under a urinal moon.
Those are very, very death metal pun titles. Absolutely.
I sort of had to crack down on it. Like I was just like, okay, just these because they're solid and not too funny. Like we're walking a bit of a fine line. I wanted to be witty and amusing, but not kind of like
Yeah.
just for the laughs kind of band.
Well, and I think there's also the issue, right, of if you're almost trying too hard with some of that stuff, you know, and then it sounds like you're just saying, you know, replacing like a word with the antonym for the sake of just trying to be metal. It almost becomes like Death Clock type levels of parody of itself, you know, if you go too far in that direction, right?
Yeah, and I wanted to sort of like give a nod to that direction, but not be like fully frolicking over in that field. Like, and as you say, like Death Clock is already over there. Like, and I'm not going to be able to compete against that like a massive machine. So, yeah, we want something. We want something where
fun
like,
with it, right?
We want something where the Bestial Warlust guys can sort of like get down to us and sort of like every now and then go from like going to, you know, something like that.
Absolutely. So what are so the album's out next month, July, right? Mm-hmm. What are your favorite tracks on this album that you're like most proud of and you can't wait for people to check out?
100% the title track Die For Us, which is the first song on the album.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
It's a good one.
Yeah. That is, if anyone has ever heard us and ever enjoyed anything that we've done ever, then that track is going to be just like worth the admission price, like to this album alone. It definitely has, for my money, most savage but most hilarious lyrics. It opens just with relentless frenzy blasting. And the chorus it's the heaviest but also catchiest thing I think that we've done. There's so much in this track where I've just like, we're laughing our heads off or hair-banging our heads off while making it. And it's definitely got a couple of our best samples, especially how it ends. Every time I think of that, I'm just like, yeah, I'm very happy. I roll around laughing. If I had to think up one more track on the album, the really slow one towards the end, Under a Urinal Moon. Urinal? I really got to learn how that is pronounced before I do too many more interviews for this.
I think both are correct.
Yeah. That one, there's always like a song or two on the album where I have no idea how it's going to turn out, like before I get into the studio and do my parts. Mm-hmm. And has a real big question mark over it. And they're usually songs where I'm kind of like, I haven't finished doing all the vocal arrangements before I get in the studio. So there's like an element of spontaneity, a bit of working like with the engineer, like who's always Jack Hartley at Ghost Note here. And that was one of those tracks, like the last half of it has got this kind of like, most of the track was pretty obvious. It's this very creepy black metal, I guess, kind of go. Mm-hmm. With the previous album, we had Destroyer of Worlds, which was, you know, what we kind of do, the very creepy, venomous, like black metal thing that then turns into a bit of a blastathon.
Yep.
But with Under a Urinal Moon, it was like, it was kind of strange. It hits almost like the 2/3 of the way mark, and it starts blasting, but it doesn't really lift in tempo. And when just listening to it instrumentally, I was at a bit of a loss. We got into the studio and started really just experimenting and layering. And again, mentioning Bestial Warlust, like they've got this song in the Graveyard of God, which is just creepy as fuck for something really brutal. And there's kind of like this main in-your-face black metal vocal and almost subliminal kind of like gutturals like in the background behind it, and so I was really leaning heavily into that, and it came out really unexpectedly good. So I hear it, and it's one of those ones. Every musician, you've probably had it as well. You do a song or a track or something like that, where you listen to it afterwards, and it's kind of like, did I do that? Did I do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes.
that's one of those on the
Definitely.
album for me. Yeah, I like listening to it. It's like listening to another band. So
Cool. That's always a good feeling when you release something and then you hear it alongside other music. Like if you've got it on a thing and it just other bands have mixed in with it, and then your song comes on and it takes you like 10, 15 seconds to go, oh, hey, that's my song.
yeah,
Like, is always a good feeling. One last question before we take it home there. Obviously, as we've mentioned a couple of times, it's coming out in July. People can get their hands on it then. Live shows in support of the album coming up as well?
yes, we're only just starting to talk about live shows now. We've got two booked in September. Only one of them's been announced, and that's Hell on the Bay, which is a festival on a boat.
Love it.
Yep, I think it's the two dates that we got booked are September, I think it's 13th and 14th. The boat gig is on the 14th.
Okay.
We'll be playing, there's going to be three bands. I know one of the other ones is, I think it's Freedom of Fear. So they're from my neck of the woods. Excellent. I won't have to ride a plane over there by myself. They've been touring the country. They just toured with Carcass. So anyone who saw them then and enjoyed them, come along. Anyone who wants to get yelled at on a boat, that's where we'll be.
Sounds like a great time. And if people want to follow you guys to keep up on all the news on everything, what's the socials they should head to?
Let me see. We're across all the socials, so we're on Facebook. That gets updated regularly. Instagram, I think Facebook. What was it? Band thing is Werewolves in Hell. Twitter is like or X is Werewolves 20. Instagram is I think Werewolves Band Official. Or Werewolves Official Band, if that doesn't work for you.
No worries. Well, I'll make sure they're all down in the thing underneath the video anyway, for sure, so that people can keep on top of that. But yeah, go and follow Werewolves. Go and check out the back catalogue. 4 albums already, despite only being around since 2019. Another one, prepare yourself for the new one coming out in July. Go out to the live shows and show these guys some support, because that's a hell of an effort that you guys are putting out there, and you deserve to have plenty of support for that. So thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today, Sam. Really, really appreciate it, especially coming off a night shift like that. I know those can be brutal. And I'll catch you next time. And thank you very much for watching. Peace out.
Cheers, man.